Welcome to our interview today. My name is Marianne Canningis, and I'm very glad to have Kate Birch here today to talk with me about her famous provings of the einkorn and glyphosate. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
Thank you for being here today. And may I ask you to introduce yourself a bit to our community?
Okay, great. So I'm Kate Birch. I live in Minnesota. I'm actually English by birth, and anyways, came to America from Canada in the 80s. But so then I was introduced to homeopathy, and I've been a homeopath since 1994, so it's 26 years now. And it's been a journey. As I look back, you never really know where you go in life, but really life has unfolded for me and given me many gifts to share along the way. So the first book I wrote was Vaccine-Free, Prevention and Treatment of Infectious Disease. That was published in 2007. And that was really after growing concern of seeing children with vaccine damage and knowing that homeopathy could treat infectious disease so well. And then a number of other books. There is liver and biliary, homeopathic treatment of liver and biliary ducts, or diseases of the liver and biliary ducts, which was originally written by French homeopath Bernaville in the 1930s. It went out of print. I found this book. It was an amazing book for me. It was just a very short, small book, and I started teaching from the book. And when it went out of print, I needed to print it again, and I've added in my own notes, so it's twice as long as it is, but two separate books within one book. It's an amazing book to learn about how our body processes food, breaks down proteins, fats, sugars, so on, and then all the remedies in the way, you know, that facilitate or if there's dysfunction on those levels. So then The Solution, which is a book on homeoprophylaxis, a parent's guide to educating your immune system, and an acute care manual. I think every homeopath rite of passage is to write an acute care manual. So I have one of those too. And then, but the work really culminated in the last two projects. One was the proving of einkorn wheat, and we'll talk more about that. And then, well, I'm not going to say my last piece, which I swore I wasn't writing again, but I'm just about to publish a whole booklet on our homeoprophylaxis research. That's going to go live August 1st. But glyphosate free and how to detox your body from glyphosate, because as you can see, I'm concerned with global issues, and that book took me by surprise also. I wasn't planning on writing that one.
I apologize for the cat intruding.
Okay, yes. Yeah, she's lovely. He? She?
He.
Yeah.
He was thrown away by his mother when he was about 1 week old.
Uh-huh.
He came to me when he was 10 days old.
Oh.
He actually had umbilicus hernia and navel inflammation. Was helped by calcium carbonicum and is living with me since then. He's 2 years old now. And he still thinks I'm his mother.
Yes, well, you are.
And he's very happy whenever he can stay with me. And yes, I allowed him to be in my office. Nobody is around at the moment.
Good.
So you said what you did write about, and I had a question in between, which I forgot by the cat coming. Oh yeah, I know. Now I know it. I wanted to know how you initially met homeopathy.
I was a young mom, and in what I would say a discordant family unit with my son and his father. And my son screamed all the time, and he drank all the time, and I slept all the time.
Mhm.
And somebody said, you guys need to see a homeopath. And so with that, we started with my son, who was 2.5 at the time, and he had night terrors. He was screaming at night. And then after we addressed him with stramonium, then actually, I think, no, it was his father first, because one dose of Nux vomica, he became totally sane and sober, and we could function better. And then the screaming stopped, and then we started addressing me, and I had, I guess it was a postpartum hyperthyroidism, and I was just losing weight so much, and then sleeping all the time. I was exhausted, and so then quickly my health turned around, and I was 23 at the time, and I had already had some sort of, I never heard of homeopathy before, but I knew whatever I did in life, I needed to be connected to the elements and to the earth. And I felt the earth very intensely. I felt the trees, the plants, the animals, and my own being. And I said, whatever I do in life, I need to know that. And it's interesting, I had, the words came to me last night, in the middle of the night, was processing something else, and realizing what we're doing with homeopathy is that, you know, homeopathy is governed by these principles and philosophy, and, you know, the right and the wrong way, whatever, that doesn't matter. But what it means is that we play with nature. We play with the elementals. We play with the ability to heal. And in order to really be the most effective at that, our own agenda needs to be put aside, right? So then we just become servant to the calling of the patient and what nature wants to bring to them to help reveal that. And I don't know if those are the exact words, but that's the image that I had last night, and just really going, wow, that is and with that idea, like all schools of philosophy in homeopathy, it doesn't really matter if people agree or don't agree, or if that's, you know, is a general thing that we're doing is being called to nature and called to the healing of humanity and people.
Yes, and more connect to the kingdoms and understand.
Yeah.
And the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom.
And it's not really a cognitive thing, because I mean, we have all this schooling, and we can, and there's programs and these amazing works that Scholten and Sankaran and Massimo and, you know, Jeremy have done, but that's not it, because you can go, like, let's talk about einkorn. So so of course, taking on a subject of infectious disease opens a whole realm of the conundrum of the vaccine paradigm, which we are right now on the brink of trying to break it down, because we're all going to be genetically modified if we don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, what I was seeing since the early 90s was vaccine damaged children. And I kept saying, you know, just if they only knew homeopathy, you know, if they only knew just a little homeopathy. And so I started lecturing, and then even at 2000, when Bush was elected and he went ahead and got his anthrax and smallpox vaccine, like bringing back those vaccines is like a great thing. I was like, no, wait, you know, there's homeopathy is there. They just aren't smart enough. You know, I guess that's the only thing that I could come up with. And then 9/11 happens, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's something else happening, because then that justifies the war on terrorism, and then we can just vaccinate everybody, and because they're using bioweapons for terrorism. And in the last few years, what I realized is that this plan has been on the books. The people who wrote the books are dead, and it's their offspring that are perpetuating, what this since the whatever it was. So all of these things were very disturbing to my soul, and seeing these vaccine damaged children. And so I started asking nature, please tell me where this is coming from. I did provings on different infectious agents, my own provings. What is measles all about? And I realized it's about the individual asserting their autonomy in nature. Mm-hmm. You need to have measles to wake up your immune system to say, I exist and I can function on this planet, right? And, of course, they're using the measles epidemics as a way to mandate vaccines. Oh, let's, conjure up, maybe release some wild virus, or actually it's the vaccine strain that's doing that. Anyways, all of this stuff is even more disturbing to me. And I started looking at what weakness in humanity, in the soul construct or the thinking, aside from being brainwashed, the education system, but even beyond that, like, how come I knew that it was bad? Like, I did vaccinate my son, and my stomach was in a knot when it happened. I'm like, I don't like that. There's something wrong with that, So I had been asking for a few years, asking nature, asking, please show me a remedy. Please show me a remedy. And the story of the einkorn, it showed up for me. And, nature gave back to me and said, we're just going to you're asking this question, and we're going to show you that this is here. And so that's where the proving came. How did I get to that? Remind me how I got there here.
You started with the disease,
nature, maybe.
Vaccinations.
Yeah. So, if we wanted to talk a little bit about that, for people who haven't seen the movie, it's a YouTube video. It's Paradise Lost and Found, the mother of Sora, proving of Triticum monococcum is the Latin name. And it takes place in Turkey. And with a group of women came together. They didn't know what we were proving. I knew what we were proving. I actually stepped into the proving, the other side, the curative side of it, about a week before the proving started, and was flying between like Turkey, and I was in Israel, and then I went back to Turkey. And all I can say is, well, you were saying something earlier about what we've done to the planet, right? That's the theme that comes forward in the einkorn. And I ultimately think that there's two themes opposite. One is that humans have a delusion that they've been forsaken by God, is a first delusion. And that is revealed early on in the trituration. So the trituration comes forward, and the movie takes you through the trituration, and we see the images, and it comes with the hunger. And it comes from the nomads becoming permanent and agrarian, and then dependent on the seasons. And some years the crops fail, and others years. And it creates this hunger, which is the beginning of Sora, right? And then all the work that's done to appease the gods and to give ritual to the gods and all of these things. And that, anyways, then you have the whole middle of the movie, which is the middle of the trituration, which is the pain of that. And the pain and how it goes out into how we experience life and what we continue to do with war and greed and corruption and capitalism and all of these things, and polluting the planet. And then at some point, it's, oh my goodness, we didn't forsake God. No, God didn't forsake us. We forsook God. And in that revelation for myself, anyways, my entire life changed. And I would say that this remedy cured me. Except for I still had glyphosate poisoning inside of my body, which I had, that hyperthyroidism had come back in 2006 and in a massive way after massive exposure. But I just want to hold that space a little bit about where we are now, and you can still see it. People's fear of infectious disease and their real tenuousness, insecurity of life.
Yeah.
You know, what is that insecurity that, you know, powers that be have capitalized in on to do whatever they want to do, to drive, you know, a vaccine agenda or whatever it is. But that base insecurity comes from the same place of not recognizing creation within. And that we alone are, I mean, our mortality, behind mortality, we still exist. So it doesn't matter, you know.
It's not easy to confront the human impermanence.
Yeah. And the physical impermanency. Yeah. Yeah.
Some Buddhists work a long time on that to come at ease with it.
People do. You do. Yeah.
So when we're thinking of a lost paradise, it reminds me a lot of 1 year before, when we all were allowed to travel. Nobody had to wear a mask. It has been combined with the restrictions of now. It was a lot of freedom.
Well, but it was ignorance. I mean, one thing that I'm actually appreciative of during this time in the beginning where people were locked down, life slowed down, they started hearing the birds, the skies cleaned up, the pollution was going. People, we've been on, so I would say also, I put out a prayer in 2014. Again, I was flying, it was a different time. I was flying from Turkey to Lebanon. And while on the plane up in the sky, I was a prayer for humanity. Like, we need to do something different. I don't know what it is or how it's going to happen or what's going to be there. I didn't know where I was going in Lebanon. I was invited to stay with some people that had come to me because they had a vaccine damaged child, and in their gratitude, because he was much better, they wanted me to come and stay. Anyways, they took me to the cedar Lebanese trees, the grove up in the hills there, the last stand of these trees. And when I was there, and the hermit that lived up there that was taking us on a little tour, and he's like, well, and these ones are about 2,000 or 3,000 years. Well, these ones are about 4,000 years, and over here, these ones are about 6,000 years. I'm like, okay, I want to know what this tree tells us about humanity, because 6,000 years, a lot have happened. Because up there on the mountains, you can see down, there were the ruins of the Canaanites, there were the ruins of the Crusaders, there were the ruins of, you know, every different passing, you know, military army. And meanwhile, at that time in 2014, it was a Syrian war. So that pass, there were Syrians coming over the pass. The Lebanon went from 4 million to 5 million people. So anyways, that was a journey too into the earth, into what is this planet and what are we doing here.
You do approve
So
of that tree?
I did approving of that. It is unpublished. 4 people, we did a C4 trituration. The reason I brought that up was because at that time, okay, so in 2000, sometime after, I went back there and was taken to the trees again, already this time knowing what the trees had to say. And I grabbed a hold of one of the branches, and the trees are like 300 or 400 feet tall. They are very tall. And I, understanding the butterfly effect, I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to make a wave, you know, on this planet with this tree. Please help us, humanity. Like, what are we doing, you know? And because, so you were saying that, you know, we were free. We were free. We weren't free. We were like driving, we were all lemmings jumping off the cliff, a suicide mission. You know, this poisoning our food, you know, all these different things. Now we potentially have the capacity, well, we have the capacity, it's whether our actions will do something about it. We have the potential to change trajectory, but I don't know. Yeah.
From the political side you see in your country, would you think that there's something reasonable happening at the moment?
Well, I don't want to say too much or say too many names, but what I really feel is happening is Trump is intentionally destroying everything. And it may look like craziness to other people. It may look like he's a crazy person because there's people who want to hold on to these old structures. They're very dysfunctional old structures. And what we have these terms called the deep state. And these operatives, which the vaccine agenda is a deep state agenda, which, you know, my philosophical bent is towards Gandhi. And some people will say, well, Gandhi was still a womanizer and whatever, it doesn't matter. But of the human, and I always thought that the Democratic platform was along those lines, but it's a very sick and twisted, they are back the vaccine agenda. So I don't really know, you know, it's a mess to untangle because it's connected with global politics. It's all around the world. And in some ways, Trump looks like a crazy guy and what he's doing is crazy. And then at other times you're like, wow, what was that about? You know, like there's something happening. So we'll see.
Do you think that your country will go for falling into different states or fall into civil war?
Well, first to say it's not my country. I do reside here and I don't vote because I can't vote. But there is a potential that the states could go each state on their own. And some states, you know, I mean, the biggest threat right now would be the idea of mandatory vaccines. Some states have already mandated a COVID vaccine. And I know in other countries, they already arm twisted them into mandatory vaccines. Like Saudi Arabia has the highest autism rate around the planet.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do with coronavirus. I don't know what the pulse is in Europe. Now I do feel like there's a lot more common sense going around. The thing of it is in America is there's no common sense. There's very little common sense in the people. And they somehow, you know, Rudolf Steiner talked about the vaccines. You know, he said that man is going to invent something that's going to turn off the soul of the child. And what he meant by that is along the lines of what I said with the morbillium, the measles, is that we need measles to, well, we need these childhood infectious diseases to realize our vulnerability.
Yeah.
And to trust that our immune system has the intellect to process that. And And then nature sometimes wins, because if you don't have the capacity, and the thing of it is now is, and what we've seen with the COVID and all the lies behind who's dying of COVID or with COVID, or I think it's just a discharge of non-functional genetic material. So the system just collapses because that genetic material is no longer sustainable for that being in this life. And so the people who are dying are ones that have polluted themselves, abused themselves, not evolving on any level. And so just as a side note, this summer we are working on collating, or a side note, it's going to be front and center pretty soon, because we have 1,150 people who have taken the coronavirus nosode, and we're tabulating results and research, and we'll have something to publish on that. But one of the pieces that of people taking that nosode is that they're just like, I feel invincible. Like, why are you guys all wearing masks? Like, they have such a clear resolution with themselves and their being. And even many of them said, I don't care if I die, because if I get the disease, because I know who I am. I feel strong in myself. So the antithesis of that is, you see how many people are suffering, clearly suffering in this time, because the immune system has been suppressed by every kind of Western medicine, and the immune system is our autonomy. And no wonder they feel so vulnerable, because they don't have an immune system. What can we say about that, you know? Yeah.
Yes, and you see the clear correlation between vitamin D being very low and
Yeah.
people being infected. So this is all about the immune system.
Mm-hmm. It is the immune system.
So we wanted to talk about your conclusion on the provings of Einkorn.
Yes.
And your conclusions on the proving of glyphosate and how this is interlinked.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't do the proving of glyphosate. However, I've taken the remedy many times, because I detox myself in a cease protocol with glyphosate. So, but the conclusions on the proving of einkorn is that, because at least historically, going from the Paleolithic, Neolithic to what came after Neolithic, as far as the evolution of humans.
I'm not good in that kind of.
Yeah. Anyways, we entered into the agrarian age, which the first grain was einkorn. And originally it was just gathered, but then they figured out how to gather it and plant it and grow more of it. And at that time, and then it was also fermented. Mm-hmm. And we had cows and sheep and goats to get the yogurt to make the ferment. And what happened in humanity was a massive explosion of intelligence, because the biome and the wheat is this foundation for the creation of all neurotransmitters, and the serotonin, the dopamine. And so when you've got such a surge of that much information, the brain can only expand, right? So all of the music and the education and the language, and we went from hunter-gatherers to, organized society, so that when culture started to grow. So this ancient wheat, before it's been hybridized, which made it a little more difficult to digest, is written within our DNA how to digest it, right? Mm-hmm. And there's one chapter in the glyphosate book that I was working on, because after doing the einkorn proving, I spent about a year studying ancient Egypt. Like, okay, what were these guys onto, and the pyramids, and so on and so forth, and who were they talking to? And so when I was writing glyphosate book, so later, I determined, I was at a conference and Stephanie Seneff was presenting on glyphosate. And I had went into sudden onset hyperthyroidism in 2006 from a massive exposure to farm soil that had glyphosate in it. And for years, I was very ill. Actually, I was almost died in that first year. I was so ill. I contracted whooping cough and didn't get better, and lost like 25, 30 pounds. Anyways, I was mostly better in 2017 when I met Stephanie Seneff and understood that glyphosate interferes with the enzyme that converts T4 to T3, very simply. Yep. So I was always hyper and I was taking a little medication, but I could never get off the medication. And so I started my own detox, and then I realized, okay, now I understand what the glyphosate is doing is killing the biome. So it kills the bacteria so that you're not making the neurotransmitters. And then also glycine is essential for most of our receptor sites are glycine operated, and it's the precursor. It interferes with the shikimate acid pathway, which creates the precursors to all the neurotransmitters. Tryptophan, phenylalanine, trypsin, which helps to digest wheat. So the celiac disease is an offshoot from glyphosate toxicity as well, because it's interfering with, and then when you've got gluten in the intestines, it's creating inflammation in the intestines. And then the gluten upregulates zonulin. So I'm writing the book, and actually almost at the end, and I'm proofing the index. There's 26 pages of index. It's probably the most comprehensive index that I've seen in a book, just because there's so much material in that glyphosate book. And the last word in there was zonulin, and I really actually didn't know so much about zonulin. So I started studying zonulin, and at the same time, I had come across a movie, this doctor it was a TED Talk, and she was talking about how in Africa, when they gave oral polio to infants, they were healthier, much healthier than children who got injected polio or any other vaccines. So the oral polio seemed to improve their health. And I thought about that because we have our home prophylaxis program, and we already had polio in the program. But I never really understood its role in humanity. So meanwhile, I come across this article that showed some ancient Egyptians with polio taking offerings to the gods, asking, please help us. And what I just put it all together, because the polio virus has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and a little research shows that wild polio lowers zonulin and closes the tight junctions in the intestines. And so we already had polio nosode in our home prophylaxis program, but we moved it to the very first remedy to be given at 2 weeks of life in infants. Mm-hmm. And clinically, I verified it. You see all these people with leaky gut and, can't digest so many foods, and there's system-wide inflammation. It's a zonulin issue. And the only thing that we can do, polio is such an amazing remedy. You can do all kinds of things. 2 or 3 weeks of taking polio, your gut's going to be working and your intestines are going to be working, and that system-wide inflammation goes down. So what was your question? Linking this to einkorn. So yeah, the whole thing just comes complete full circle with the glyphosate toxicity, which is an outbreak of, this, we are disconnected from nature and we can just destroy it and manipulate it and spray all these poisons on our food without realizing how, that's going to take us down. If the vaccine doesn't take us down, well, that's there anyways, and it's already taking us down. And you can see how many people suffer from neuropsychiatric conditions and all of these because their transmitters aren't working properly, and the receptor sites for the transmitters. But it's every system. It's the endocrine system, It's the digestive system, musculoskeletal. For me, it was all held up in my collagen. So you see also people with collagen issues. Yeah, so that's where, and the einkorn as a remedy, or as a food base, when you start eating einkorn, all of a sudden your liver is like making this amazing bile, which is digesting. I mean, it's such a there's such a deep satiation, and in that process, we release. So, you know, and it's just so interesting that I wrote a book on the liver, right? And all the biliary functions and all these things. And so I recognize exactly what was happening. Diabetes is, you know, an end result of an einkorn disturbance. Even with the coronavirus, one of our colleagues has done a C12 trituration on the coronavirus situation, and it's the understanding is a metabolic imbalance. And humans are under this huge metabolic imbalance that starts from their original hunger, becomes greed, becomes overconsumption. And our physical bodies were never designed to eat that much, never designed to, you know, it's gluttony to the worst, and we've consumed and consumed, and now we've got this huge burden, you know, whether it's a tax burden, you know, national debt, or our debt to the planet, how much we've polluted the planet. It's this huge metabolic imbalance, and everybody with, you know, congested livers and, you know, too much weight on them. And even like you said, we were free and we could travel all over. I personally was beginning to start to feel a little bit ill about traveling because, one, not only the amount of fuel that's used, but the amount of garbage every airplane produces. And to, you know, one of my economic ideas is if you're going to be in airline companies, you should invest in the most organic food that supplies the plane, and everything recyclable, and go back to dishes, because I remember when there were dishes on planes, you know, glasses and things like that, or, you know, or sturdy plastic, anyways, rewashable, whatever. This disposable society is, you know, we're gonna throw the planet away with all that. So that was a lot.
So we have it all interlinked. We have the
Yes.
einkorn, we have the glyphosate, we have the polio nosode, and we have the corona nosode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You said when testing the corona nosode, there was a feeling of invincibility.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe about that a bit more, about the corona proving symptoms?
Mm-hmm. So, so we have about 70 practitioners, and I don't have the exact number of who took the remedy. And our protocol that we developed was a single dose of a 1M, followed a week later by a triple dose of 1M. And the first dosing happened in the first week or two of March. So already Europe was pretty hit, Italy, mostly Iran and China were the main at that time. And there wasn't so much, because I know I had just given a lecture down in Florida, and they just closed the beaches there. You know, people were starting to get thinking about what was happening here in the United States, and I think in New York it was starting to happen. There were a number of people within that week or two that were starting to have some sore throats and maybe feeling a little bit like they couldn't breathe. The thing also at the time was, I know they had turned up 5G.
Yeah, I know.
And I started feeling those symptoms before. I had spent the month of January in India, where there's like 2G, where I was, if anything. And I was also in a Vipassana retreat center, so nothing out there. But so my whole system had calmed down. So when I came back to my office, I felt this. So anyways, all of this was there, but in those early weeks, actually, I think they turned the 5G down, because I know in the city of Minneapolis, we called the city, the representatives, and pretty soon I wasn't feeling those same symptoms anymore. So, but then we launched to the public, or not to the public, to our membership. We have about 1,500 people in our membership for homeoprophylaxis, and so we launched it to them, and they started taking. So some experienced first initial aggravation of their pre-existing conditions that may have fallen within the COVID spectrum, but some just completely random, like somebody had, an old BCG vaccine flare up. Is it related? I don't know. Or anyways, so some had diarrheas, but they had a history of, celiac disease. Okay, so is that COVID? It's something else. It's more, it's bringing up irritable bowel or asthma, bringing up the weakness there. But then as they took the remedies, and not everybody did that. Most people just took the remedy and then next day they're feeling fine. And then this feeling of invincibility, I know when they passed the mandatory vaccine law here in Minnesota, I was freaking out. I was going to the one natural health food store that I go to like on the last day before this, so I could stock up on food. And I'm like, I have to get a hold of myself. I took a 10 dose of this coronavirus, and the next day I was just like, oh, wow. Okay, I'm just myself. And there's, with it comes this whole power domination structure. And that has been encrypted in human DNA for a long time. Thousands of years, if not more, of one level group of people dominating over the other. So slavery, whatever it is. And I think that we all have a little bit of that in it. And, I don't know what's happening. Was like when I referenced 2014 when I called on some help to come to this planet. For us, was coronavirus the answer? What the politicians are doing it, how many other countries are suffering from a political collapse? I'm not sure. Maybe you can tell me from your point of view.
Economy is going down everywhere. And in case we are facing a second lockdown in September, in case they are doing that, we are going to a total economical collapse in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew Europe had been struggling since 2008 also, and we had somehow America pulled it out. But yeah, I think so.
And at the moment, as the tourism season is, people were trying to go on holidays. Now it begins with closing of borders again. It begins, today is the first day in Greece where wearing the mask is mandatory again. So coming here for holiday is not fun. And you can see that somehow people are introduced to things getting worse again, whether it can be proven or not. And I think as soon as the schools will open again and everybody is at home in his or her country, we are going to face a second lockdown. Initiating probably civil war beginning in Germany.
In Germany, civil war?
I think so. If they're going to go for a second lockdown, I guess within a fortnight we will have civil war in Germany. The tendency in the towns is already going to be very aggressive against the government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we know that all the police is armed up to the teeth at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The money
Yeah, it's not clear to me why, infectious disease and police are like two sides of, this is a very strange dynamic, no? Wouldn't it be? And on the other side is like, wow, homeopathy is amazing. And the amount of energy that's put towards blocking homeopathy is so clear now. Anyways, just
it's one part of my work is showing everybody how astronomical the potential of homeopathy is,
mm-hmm.
and that if we would go for homeopathic treatment, we would need nothing else.
Nothing else.
And if we
And
would
we
go for
need the police
prophylaxis,
either.
we wouldn't need anything else.
Exactly.
We have so many provings in India. We have your provings. We have so many positive cases. And it's very interesting that no government beside of the Indian government is taking up on that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you have to say the only country who has something like the Ministry of Ayush is India.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other countries don't have.
No, they don't have.
And as far as Europe is concerned, they took all the pandemic law possibilities to create something in the politics that resembles the actions that were taken by the government in 1933. So if you think of the overtake of Hitler
mm-hmm.
after the Weimar Republic, it went down the same way,
mm-hmm.
quite in the same time. That was horrifying to me, to see that there were historical moments happening and nobody really reacting to it. And at
Forgotten.
the moment, they are able to pass any law without asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what to say about all that. I do know that the coronavirus nosode en masse, the more people that take it, it will shift, because they will shift. But there, how many people need to take it? 100,000 maybe, 200,000. Then maybe we have. Mm-hmm.
Where can the coronavirus nosode be ordered?
Yes. So it's underground. Mm-hmm. I can't say it publicly. Yes, there is a pharmacy in the United States that has it. And for those who are cease practitioners, they know where this is. And if you're not a cease practitioner, if you ask somebody who's a cease practitioner, you will be able to find it.
Okay, and those coming from other countries, they can ask you.
They can ask me, yes. But the pharmacy is a membership-only pharmacy. This is the one thing that we have in the United States, is with the looming FDA draft guidance, is, they selected infectious agents as one of the things that they're going to go after. Mm-hmm. We've done our research completely under the table. And fortunately within the United States, they have what's called the right to freedom of assembly privately. Mm-hmm. You have private membership associations that no government body can get into what you're doing. And so our practitioners and the consumers of home prophylaxis, they're within this organization, And then the pharmacy, they have their own organization too, private membership.
Oh, this is something like a club.
Yeah, a club. Yeah. I mean, the Freemasons are as a private membership organization. Nobody knows what goes on inside the Freemasons. I mean, that's how a lot of what's happened in this country is because, yeah, whatever they do.
So we will
But
add the information of this how to get member in this association beneath the video.
the video. Oh, Free and Healthy Children International is our organization that's offering the homemade prophylaxis. The thing of it is, it's only within, I mean, we are international, but those private membership laws only happen or applicable to those in the United States.
Oh, okay.
You understand? Because it's written in the American Constitution of that. So far, I mean, they haven't disbanded. It would take Brussels to disband nosodes from, I know they're illegal in France, but it's within the EU, nosodes can be sold, and so they're there. Yeah.
I know it is all a bit complicated, and this is why Isaac Golden is going for another combination for homeoprophylaxis. But it is there and it is possible. And there's a last question.
Yeah.
Maybe quite visionary question. Did you ever think of combining einkorn, glyphosate, polio, and corona to one remedy and prove that?
My whole system is going no. They're on different wavelengths. Definitely not the glyphosate, because einkorn is of creation and glyphosate is of destruction. And I'll say this, that writing the glyphosate book was, if I hadn't have done einkorn, which connected me ultimately with creation on the deepest way possible, I would have killed myself writing the glyphosate book, because what I revealed of how glyphosate gets in from affecting the neural tube, affecting sperm motility, parturition, lactation, psychological development, and then seeing all these people eating this plastic food and they're like robotic, nonsensical, they have no, anyways, America is the worst of all that. And during the detox process, I was doing saunas and massage and rolfing, and then heavily on the bone broth, which is a good glycine. So I was replacing the glyphosate that was stuck in my system with glycine, and then it needed to get processed through my liver and then out through my intestines, and it all got stuck in the omenta of my intestines. But there was one point that my liver, I was just doing it so fast. I'm like, get this stuff out of me. You're not welcome, whatever. I do everything that I could to do that. And my liver got pretty overwhelmed, and I got this most intense headache that was, the answer to the headache was, you're just going to go hang yourself right now. Just, you're done, be done with it. And it took every ounce of, the headache, it was like a not self headache. I could just blow myself away, whatever, because it was such a crippling headache. And then finally it moved into my bryonia, and then it moved into my intestines, which were like rocks, cholesynthis. And then the next morning it all passed out. But I realized that glyphosate, the seeds of glyphosate, is an agent of destruction. It came out of Nazi Germany. It's made by the same people who did that hydrocyanic acid. And it's very interesting that hydrocyanic acid is an amazing remedy for COVID because of the paralysis and constriction in the lungs. And in the Hasidic Jew population in New York City, one being descendants of those that were under that, escapees, but they all experience the COVID in the same situation. And then they go in the hospitals and get put on these respirators and killed. Anyways, that is one line, you know, that we don't. Then we've got the other line, which is life and creation, and that's where the einkorn fits in. And in the middle is you, and depends on which side of hell you want to go. It's like I wouldn't mix the two.
Yeah.
Polio goes with the einkorn.
For me, it's on the same line, just other ends of the duality.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And my question was, in fact, if we would combine it and prove it, would it give the vision to the way out?
Potentially, or we would go crazy.
The one or the other, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with the einkorn and polio for a while, and then, you know, the glyphosate, I used that remedy to detox. I never found any spiritual liberation from it. I know that it was facilitating the release of that poison from my body. I mean, whether that liberated me, but I never felt any resonance of helping my soul on any level.
Do you think that we will need the glyphosate remedy to get the glyphosate out, or could it be done by the simillimum?
Not the simillimum. It needs a massive mechanical detox.
Okay.
Because it's built into the system. Okay, so
I wanted to know.
Yeah, the no homeopathic remedy. I mean, I was incurable for the hyperthyroidism that I had. I spent 1 year in meditation trying to figure out where this came from because I was a healthy person. I actually gave up homeopathy because I've been treated for 20 years in homeopathy. I'm like, how can I get sick? I've been treated for 20 years for homeopathy. It just didn't make any sense to me. And then I would also have remedies that could affect my mental, emotional being, but it didn't touch the thyroid at all. And every thyroid remedy never made any difference at all because it wasn't a natural disease. It was a twisted disease. It wasn't of my own, right? Two separate things. It was a poisoning. Yeah.
Okay, and this I know by different poisons that you definitely need to take a homeopathic remedy according to that poison.
Exactly. So like contrasting then the einkorn, because wheat is such a foundation of our diet all around the world. Everybody's eating wheat, the ancient wheat. I mean, now all the wheat has glyphosate. Like I said, how can everybody be made sick by wheat when it's the staff of life, right? That was an oxymoron for me. That was a 2014 prayer on my way to the middle, Lebanon. It's like, isn't that what that is? But the einkorn gets into the metabolic processes, gets into the love and joy of life. It also relates with the opiate receptors, which is very interesting because the poppies grow in the war fields that we're fighting over, whatever famine. Anyways, that is a much more, I would say, earth remedy. Yeah.
And I know einkorn actually, it was planted in my country in the northern parts.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When you're lucky, you can buy it in the organic shops.
Yeah, I get from Italy. They've put restrictions on it now. I'm not exactly sure why that is. They don't want to flood out. They see that people are finding some humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what to do with those forces. Yeah.
So we are living in interesting times.
Mm-hmm.
And as you point out, with the einkorn proving and with the glyphosate, we have two ends of what we can experience.
Mm-hmm.
And with the corona disease, now we have the possibility to go to one side or the other.
We can, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We can
Yeah.
go for suppression of everything
Uh-huh.
and in slavery, or we can go for
Liberation.
liberation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Interesting work you're doing.
Thank you.
Which is the college you went to?
Pacific Academy of Homeopathy. It's no longer there, but it was in the Bay Area in California.
Is it easy to study homeopathy in the United States at the moment, or do you face a lot of difficulties in getting a good college?
You know, there's a number of 3-4-year colleges in the United States, and I would all say that they're pretty good. You know, each one has some little idiosyncrasies, but, you know, I'd say for the most part, if they could be more inclusive to more, because the way I practice, I was trained as a classical homeopath, but you just from what I'm describing with the glyphosate is it's a complex disease. Vaccine damage is a complex disease. I use many remedies in a sequential form, and many people I think have evolved to doing that in their practice because health is so, using salt salts, using detox remedies, using constitutional remedies, organ-specific remedies, different things based on what's showing up. Yeah.
So my last question
Okay.
is, 100 years ago, we still had homeopathic hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Professor Pradeep Kumar Gupta in India, who
Mm-hmm.
is leading a homeopathic hospital,
Mm-hmm.
fitting everything with it, having near to 100 indoor patients and hundreds of outdoor patients each day. While every hospital in India was closed, or in his region was closed during COVID, he was the one hospital being open, taking in everybody,
Mm-hmm.
having ultimate success in
Mm-hmm.
treating and in
Mm-hmm.
homeoprophylaxis. Do you think that we might manage again having homeopathic hospitals again?
Yes. One thing I think is the greatest liberator of all is there's two sides of this. One, as an individual, that human quality, being responsive to society, is we acquiesce to not bring conflict. That's one side. The other side is that we live under a number of false myths, or I guess the myth is false, about what is, right? I know when I wrote the book Vaccine Free, people said, "Oh, you can write that? Aren't you afraid?" And I said, "No, because this is the truth and it needs to be said." And that acquiescence, so we saw in England, and it's still happening, the media bashes homeopaths, and the British are so good at saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me," and they fold up their bags and go away. Slowly, the media has done it enough that the homeopaths are just like, enough is enough. And one of the pieces that I realized in my own life is I became aware of all these myths that we have inside of our head about what we can and cannot do in life. And it takes brazen people. I mean, in India, because I was also just there in January, and I went, and COVID had just started. We got out of the Vipassana the 31st. So the 27th of January was announced. And the 8th of February, 7th of February, I was in Delhi, and I went to the Central Council for Research and met with the Dr. Manchanda and keep forgetting the other guy's name, and I met with all these people and took tours of the hospitals. And I also worked for 1 week in another hospital. I had been there before in Allahabad, my friends in there. I've been there 3 times, a week and a half each time, working with every infectious disease and homeopathy and that. And so I know there's no myth that people have to overcome in India because it's there, right? In the Western world, I met with B. Jane publishers with Vaccine Free, and they said, aren't you afraid that the pharmaceutical companies are going to come after you for writing this book, Vaccine Free? I mean, that was early in the day. Nobody really knew in 2008, really, those pharmaceutical companies. I said, I'm not afraid. I'm counting on it.
Okay.
Means that we just have to keep doing what we're doing. Make a hospital. Do it. Just those politenesses, those acquiescences, the gentleness of ourselves it doesn't matter. Just do it. And that's how we've done our coronavirus research. That's how every piece of work I've ever done is just get on a plane, I'm doing this, you know, or whatever it is, write a book. Doesn't matter. We have to live by our truth.
Okay, be unstoppable.
Yes.
Thank you, Kate.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Marianne. Yeah.